Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 339. How reasonable is too reasonable? A while back on my YouTube channel, I delivered a live show called You're Not Difficult Enough. So it makes absolute sense, well, in my mind anyway, to follow that up with a podcast episode about being too reasonable. Let me start by saying that many of the introverts I work with are very reasonable people, sometimes too reasonable, in my humble opinion. But I don't have to go back too many years to uncover my own excessive reasonableness. There were a few labels I picked up during that era that shaped how I perceived myself and how I was treated. Eager to please, conflict averse, both of those are true, and one which was less true, fence sitter. Well, maybe true, but misunderstood. Many of you know that I'm a certified Myers-Briggs practitioner and also certified in disc profiling, SDI, Strength Deployment Inventory, plus one or two other personality profiling instruments. Suffice to say, I'm not wedded to any one in particular because I am very keen to be able to offer people something that may help them better understand themselves and how they show up in the world. And this, of course, is as opposed to putting them in a box, which is what many people fear. These tools have proved invaluable to me over the years and have definitely helped me to understand and play to my own natural strengths. Here are some of the things I know to be true of me and who I am. And when you read these, you'll probably see why I have a tendency towards sometimes excessive reasonableness. I am patient, but beware if you push it too far or abuse my good nature, because my bite is as good as my bark, albeit in a polite English way. I am calm even in, or maybe especially in, really serious situations. I've had friends and colleagues say to me in the past, "Jo, if I were you, I'd worry now." The ability to be calm when all around you are going crazy is such a beneficial quality I've found. I am reflective, sometimes too much so. The term navel-gazer could have been invented to describe me, which can sometimes be a weakness, as you can imagine. I am empathic, but not an empath, an important distinction. So I won't necessarily feel all of your feelings, and I can turn it off when I need to. I am supportive, which is probably why I do the work I do with such joy, and why one of my business principles is around being supportively challenging. I am a good listener. I learned many years ago about the power of listening to understand rather than simply listening to respond. And the latter, I've noticed, is what far too many people seem to do. I also came to realise that I have an uncanny ability to see all, or most, sides of an argument. So my empathy and compassion can be all-encompassing and pretty inclusive. I then found out the hard way, though, that this is a real problem for some who demand I take one side or the other. In fact, this quality of mine has caused people to lose trust in me, and that still baffles me to this day. But each to their own. I can influence, but I cannot and would not want to control others. So, as you might have detected, my natural qualities and behaviours tee me up beautifully to be reasonable, considered, accommodating, and compassionate. But what even does being reasonable really mean? According to etymonline.com, the etymology of reasonable has ancient roots and can be traced back to meaning to count or to think, to have sound judgment, endowed with the faculty of reason. If I'm going to be endowed with anything, please make it that, because there is absolutely nothing wrong with being able to reason, is there? In fact, if more people were able to think and have sound judgment, maybe this world wouldn't be in the shite state it is. So I come back to the title of this episode, How Reasonable is Too Reasonable? Or, is it possible to be too reasonable? I had to look to my own experience to answer this question and found many examples to help me make sense of it. As someone who considers myself reasonable, I had assumed that others would be similarly reasonable. At some point, we begin to sense our individuality. You'll have heard me say before that I'm a trusting soul, so I naturally assume we all play by the same rules in life. Well, horror of horrors, I found out the hard way that that was not the case. People lie and cheat and stick shamelessly to their guns even when all the evidence shows otherwise. Now, please don't think I'm a saint, far from it actually, but I do believe in fairness, equity and common decency. My values are strong enough that you won't persuade me otherwise, no matter what I'm confronted with. And therein lies part of the problem, because it's also evident that the reasonable amongst us are often taken for mugs and at risk of being both manipulated and or gaslit. So the big question is, how do we discern and then navigate the potentially treacherous line that separates being reasonable from being taken for a fool? Because I have absolutely no intention of hardening my stance, but nor do I want to be mugged off. So it's about detecting where that line is and being prepared to toe that line as often as possible. Interesting idiom that, isn't it? Toe the line. Its origins come from military settings where it's important to do what's required without causing trouble. So in this context, towing the line isn't about becoming less reasonable, but becoming more discerning about where reasonableness ends and self-abandonment begins. That, my friends, is such an important distinction, and we should rightfully expect everyone to have their own view of it. Because when a reasonable person has mastered the art of speaking with authority, something I work with my introverted clients to achieve, they are the ones people turn to in a crisis. They can be relied on for their sound judgment, even when the message they deliver is unpopular or unwelcome. Here are the things that I found worked for me, and I'm more than happy to share them with you. They are in no particular order because they are more of a menu to choose from than a process to follow. And as you may already be doing some of these things subconsciously, this might be the nudge you need to bring them to conscious awareness. Is what I'm considering doing or saying truly aligned with my values? How we reason is based on our values after all, so it makes sense to check in with them to begin with. Am I giving people equal airtime? And that includes me. As I explored with a coaching supervision client recently, being of service does not prohibit or exclude self-service or self-care. What part, if any, is my residual people-pleaser need playing in overriding my principle of being supportively challenging? I shared earlier how my natural qualities tee me up to be reasonable, but that's not an excuse to go easy on people unnecessarily. Which boundaries are in play here? I use that term specifically because the line you're towing is invariably a boundary line. What's acceptable and what's not? What am I tolerating when I should be pushing back? Where do I need to strengthen my boundaries? And finally, what logic, facts or evidence am I basing my reasoning on? I recently challenged someone who posted, Psychological and clinical studies are suggesting that 80% of introverts don't have a girlfriend or boyfriend. I seriously doubted this, so I asked for the research papers or references. There were none. Way to destroy credibility, pal. I think I'm coming to the conclusion that the right kind and level of reasonableness, far from being a weakness, is actually emotional intelligence in action. When I am being reasonable, I'm aware of my own emotions. I'm able to regulate them, not to the point of passivity or detachment though, but so I avoid getting into unnecessary conflicts. I understand the impact of my behaviour on others, and I can maintain adult-to-adult relationships, even with those I disagree with. So reasonableness really does seem like emotional intelligence in action to me. One thing I found particularly interesting, and quite an aha moment, is that being reasonable sits between two variants of being unreasonable. Overly soft at one end of the spectrum and overly demanding at the other. I'd never thought of it that way before, as I thought I'd only experienced one form of unreasonable, the cruel or heartless demanding type, and that's definitely not me. If I slip from reasonable, it'll invariably be to the too soft end of the spectrum. What has helped me to slip less often is becoming braver. And just like flourishing, becoming braver is an ongoing process, a journey, not a destination. There are always things I can be braver about. And as we discovered the first time I ran the Becoming Braver adventure a few years ago, courage and bravery really are the foundations on which confidence is built. Until a few years ago, I realised I'd always had it the other way round, but during the 4 days over which the adventure took place, the evidence was impossible to ignore. Opportunities to be braver were identified, actions were planned and executed, accompanied by moral support and accountability, before strategies were put in place to sustain the courage and momentum. It became obvious that becoming braver is the catalyst for so much that we want to and deserve to achieve. And it takes the right kind of bravery to stay reasonable without compromising who you are so you can speak with authority. So I'm delighted to let you know that the Becoming Braver adventure is coming back very soon. So watch this space and join like-minded souls on their journey to confidence. My parting request is that you think carefully about your own reasonableness to ensure that you're not slipping into either of the unproductive, unreasonable ends of the spectrum. You owe it to those you live and work with, and more importantly, you owe it to yourself. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.